Namaskaram. Hello and welcome to Daily Global Insights by Sri and Sri. Today is the 25th of March, episode number 126. Here are the main points. Chicago City Council Anti-CAA resolution defeated. Wisconsin Assembly greenlights investigation into 2020 elections. VP Kamala Harris handed over the border fiasco and to fix the issues. And more importantly, 42 million from Caribbean and Latin America want to migrate to the United States. In a letter to the PM of Pakistan, Imran Khan, Prime Minister Modi calls for cordial relations and India signals readiness for restarting trade with Pakistan and that the onus is on Pakistan. Sir, first, I would like to start with what happened in Chicago City Council today. By a vote of 26 to 18, the resolution condemning India for its CAA Act was defeated, which means 26 voted against it, 18 voted for it, 2 abstained. I believe 4 were absent. I could be wrong about that because I thought the number of city council members was 50. So this is what has happened. So I think after about a row of 7 or 8 city councils, we now have one on the win column for India. This is because of all the hard work that Chicagoans have done. We are going to give you more information about this. This is just breaking news. In fact, the vote finished just minutes ago. So that's where things stand. Sridharji, namaskaram. Welcome to PGurus channel. And I hope you are feeling better today, sir.
Namaskar, and getting better. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to, recontinuing the stuff after, a little bit of a health setback. And look, I think the Chicago resolution is outstanding. We all have been fighting. This is not just people of Chicago, and we should congratulate the people of Chicago, but the Hindus and the Indians right across the United States have been fighting and fighting and fighting to make the case that there is no legal and moral and ethical ground to pursue a path that they had pursued. And I think including PGurus has played, we have played a very significant role in the advocacy. What is CAA and what is not CAA? And we have even had 2 eminent Indian jurors come and talk to us about it, clearly outlining. So much of the presentation seems to have focused, and now this will probably set the trend as this is taken across the other councils before it eventually dies.
And Wisconsin Assembly greenlights investigation into 2020 elections, sir. Is it too little, too late?
It's like, the horse has left the stable and the door is being bolted. We talked about this a couple of days ago that this was coming. We had Arizona investigating. We have had now Wisconsin investigating. The only, I can say, the reaction is coming because of the situation with regard to the HR Act 1, which is around, not HR Act 1, which is around the new voting laws and processes that is being enacted. People are just sheerly frightened at what the Democrats are contemplating.
And House GOP members demand explanation from the Department of Homeland Services over immigrants released with no court dates. What happened here, sir?
Well, I think that, again, we covered this, but now this has come out very formally, which is the GOP is asking for an investigation, which is effectively to state that when you have detain, retain, release, or detain, release, the bare minimum that you do is for these people to appear on a specific day in a specific court, which is not too far from where they are going to be located, to make their case as to why they did what they did, and get an adjudication of the process. Now, if you say go inside, no problem, and no dates, there's no kind of an incentive for any of these guys to turn up. And our Democratic friends are very, very generous and very noble to stamp them all with temporary residential permits until such time normalization occurs. And since they're here, we'll also get them to vote. Since they are here, we'll also take taxpayers' money and get them to pay. No wonder it's 42 million. Yes, this is on a survey, but very soon, if you kind of advocate this across the world, maybe 100 million will come from Africa. They would say, we want to migrate to United States.
Yes, the number just boggles the mind. Pentagon asked to house unaccompanied minors at Pentagon military facilities. Wow. So now we are running out of space.
This specific news item that we have picked up and highlighting is we have no idea who these people are. And for them to be housed in a Pentagon facility? I mean, we've gone berserk. This country has gone berserk. Would you take people whom you don't know anything and ask them to be put in the military facilities housing? I mean, it's astounding and mind-boggling. And by the way, many of these intellectual Democrats would like to normalize this as a normal behavior. And that is the fallacy of the system and mindset that we are in right now.
And support for border wall surges as border crisis intensifies. I have a question here. They're coming through the gates. They're not scaling the walls.
Well, I think that the reason why the border wall is, if you have a border wall which is fully completed, you're not going to stop the funnel. You're only going to slow down the inflow of the funnel. If you don't have a border wall, it's open sesame. Everybody can just cross because the border crossing is no longer considered illegal. Detention is no longer considered legal. And, the catch and release, no testing of COVID is the norm. But even Mr. Biden has spent $87 million for housing these people, illegals. There are several photographs making rounds which shows that these people in inhumane facilities. Now you are telling that you are going to make them move to, potentially house them in military facilities in San Diego. So where is this guy heading? I mean, it just is astounding. But because we have a complete left-wing media, now you flip the coin, and I think again we reported this. A federal judge has reported that there is an undue balance of power of the media with the Democratic Party. So therefore, if you have no media which has no objectivity to report the maleficence of these acts as well as the consequences, it just is astounding. That would be my kind of observation. By the way, I think there is also the Government Administration Office, GAO, which has been asked to investigate. This may eventually become an impeachment scenario if the national security is compromised.
And Senator Lindsey Graham says, we will shut the Senate down if we are denied access to the border facilities.
Well, he's thrown the cat amongst the pigeons.
And Vice President Kamala Harris has been handed over the border fiasco and to fix the issues. It's almost like, here, I created the mess, you go and fix it.
Well, I think that is basically debunking the responsibility and giving her a big garland, which is to say, let's see what you do with this garland. I mean, Kamala Harris is another topic by itself as a news, but for the purpose of brevity, we just stay. There's so many issues with her. We got somebody who knows nothing about protocols, politics, policies. She kind of nicely sings, dances, tweaks her face and smiles and missmiles and speaks lies, truth, seamlessly. She's a lawyer. So therefore, for her to be put in charge, she's coming, don't be surprised. She'll come back and say, this is all to do with Trump problems. That's why there's a surge. So the story is that she's totally incompetent to, at least based on the evidence so far, to deal with this issue.
Biden considering an executive order to consider gun control measures. Again, another one where you're trying to bolt the stables after the horse has fled. This has been a problem for what? Donkey's years. So why this sudden interest now? Because of that one shooting in Colorado?
No, I think we need to, we will cover this separately after some little more water flows under the bridge. The FBI has been monitoring this guy. He has been identified as one with mental disorder. He has been identified as one with past kind of crimes. He was seen buying weaponry 6 days ago. 6 days ago, prior to this incident. And now you find that there's a major. So what happened? So in major instances, you find there is a complete failure on the part of the security. This is at the FBI level. There's nothing bigger that this mishap has occurred. Then immediately you blame the gun laws. For example, Toyota airbag, Toyota cars, the airbag doesn't pop up in 5 cars. We're not going to shut down Toyota cars. We're going to find the problem and fix it so it's back on the road. Now, people will argue that is simplistic, oversimplistic in the explanation. I agree that the rules have to be tightened, security protocols have to be tightened, but you don't ban something and you believe you'll solve the problem, especially when you have dysfunctional and delusional guys, going around and making their claim.
And in India news, in a letter to Prime Minister Imran Khan, PM Modi calls for cordial relations with Pakistan. Why now?
There is apparently, I don't, you probably know this gentleman's name. He's one of the advisors to Pakistan Prime Minister. He has clearly communicated to Mr. Khan, Kashmir is no longer an issue. You're going to keep talking about Kashmir. A, you got a debt problem. B, you got a pandemic, which is killing the country. 3, you have to solve the terrorist problem inside the country. Otherwise, the Fatah will still not rule you out. 4, having spoken with Biden administration is not going to be sympathetic and overnight turn the position against India, because India has a fact base. 5, the senators who support Biden, who are in the Democratic Party, who are supposed to be Pakistan, quite a few of them have turned their back on this issue. So he has got a back to the wall. And so the Riot Act was run, and they went to the UAE royal prince, and he seems to have spoken with the minister. And Modi by nature is compassionate. He says if the guys are fine, we'll do. By the way, he also made a point in 2019 on Kashmir resolution, unilateral cancellation of trade was done by Pakistan, not by India. So if they want, the onus is on them to come back and say, we are restoring the trade. When you do that, then we'll have a conversation.
I think after the Pulwama incident, India withdrew the most favored nation status to Pakistan, but India never stopped the trade. You are right. And India to seek approval for 6 nuclear-powered submarines, prioritize over second indigenous aircraft carrier. Who do they need to get the approval from, sir?
Defense Ministry.
Defense Ministry of India.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is domestically being manufactured.
Oh, I see. Would you like to add to that, or?
The only thing that I would add, this basically tells us that there is sufficient amount of carriers across the Indian Ocean to Indo-Pacific with a vast number of planes. China is considered number 1 in nuclear submarines, and India is lagging behind, but India was helped to some extent by a combination of France and US when it confronted a Chinese submarines in Indian Ocean. So I think here they have decided that they really need to get this up. Why? Because the geopolitical situation right now, we'll get to this in Asia. The geopolitical situation is we have never seen the adventurism of China as we are seeing right now.
And Fitch Ratings revises India's GDP growth estimate to 12.8%. This is one of the highest numbers that I have seen.
Well, I think that both a combination of latent demand. We have also seen a lot of capital coming into the country. Samsung just has announced that it is going to join the PLI program to focus on three specific areas. One is 5G. Second is cells, the automobile electronic vehicle electronic cells, and the third is the electronics itself, with an intent to manufacture and for domestic Indian consumption and for export. So what you are seeing is that there is a progressive momentum of the manufacturing coming back into the country under the PLI scheme. We discussed about this, one of the great fiscal reforms. And what is most commendable in this is the demand doesn't need to come from India itself. The demand stimulus can from adjacent nations, and India can be the hub for supporting some of these large global manufacturing companies.
And in global news, China could invade Taiwan in the near future. U.S. Admiral Josh Aquino, a nominee of U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, says.
Look, I think there are three incidents that have happened in the last less than a week. Chinese planes entered the what we call as the air defense zone. We have shown maps, if you recall, to our audiences, what is an air defense zone, what is a commerce zone, what is kind of the maritime boundary, right?
Right.
So the story is that they entered the air defense zone. There was no US vessels, there was no Japanese vessels, there was no Quad. But Taiwanese kind of defended and they came out, number one. The second is the largest Chinese carrier flowed through for the first time the Japan Sea. And it just didn't stop at the Japan Sea. It went all the way back into Scarsbury Shoals Reef area. Where is Scarsbury Shoals Reef? Again, we have covered.
South China Sea.
Right. Yeah. Especially near the Spratly Islands.
Yes.
Which is an illegal occupation by the Chinese. So, causing Philippines, Japan, and all those four nations adjacent to that to basically make a claim that, hey, get out. Apparently, there was fisher vessels coming near the reef area, and Philippines has reported these are not fishermen, these are PLA warriors. They're PLA soldiers dressed as fishermen coming in. So my point is that this whole Taiwan situation, because the world is distracted, US is distracted, and Quad doesn't get a mention, and Quad has to be told that, hey, you are India, Japan, and Australia. While I'm distracted to fix all my border issues and my stimulus issues and my stuff issues, my voting registration and my illegal funding, okay, my pants are down. So somebody else has to take over this and run this. They will do it. So there is a fundamental, we were the first one to point out, is Quad being demarginalized and relegated to a backseat. There's a lot of rhetoric and statements that have come out from the U.S. defense, including from, what's his name, the newly coming in Secretary Indo-Pacific Command, head of the Indo-Pacific Command, Josh Aquilino, and also the person who is leaving, Mr. Davidson. So the story is, or Vice Admiral Davidson. So it's coming from these folks that, look, you got to get your act together here. You got to get your act together here, and we got to have a really dedicated focus. And I'm now coming to, based on my own research and the work that we are doing here, China is clearly on a path to divide the world by cutting off the entire Asia to United States and Europe. All you need to do is, draw a line. And you will see that from Himalayan kingdom to Central Asian republics, to East, South, and West Asia, and then going all the way down across into the Himalayan kingdom regions. They've got a clearly mapped out strategy. They're going to launch this multiple and cut off. And who is their partner in this? Russia. So if these guys don't wake up, then they're in deep trouble.
France summons Chinese ambassador Liu She over mad hyena insult. For our viewers' benefit, could you please explain what happened, sir?
What happened here is one of the French intellectuals, I forget his name, one of the French intellectuals has consistently made a statement that China has to be taken on. And he was supposed to visit Taiwan along with one of the French ministers to meet with the Taiwanese delegation. The moment they got wind of this fellow, the Chinese,
Liu She,
the Chinese ambassador, went on a leash, and very similar to the U.S. China show, was starting to abuse using such language. What you call, you little fool, you mad hyena. So like this, he has used 3 terms in the press in the press release. So there seems to be a coordinated attempt that every time anybody tries to bring Taiwan up, then these fellows go on a barrage. This is what I mentioned to you, that they have a clear strategy, it appears, that to cut off the Asia from rest of the world.
U.S. Secretary of State warns China threatens NATO security, calls for joint approach to counter Beijing. The United States is now beginning to come to grips with the problem. Can we say that?
United States is coming to grips with the problem, but United States is not prioritizing the allocation of assets in terms of its first set of objectives. EU and NATO are relevant, but Quad is most relevant in terms of addressing the core issues of what's happening in Japan Sea, South China Sea, and Indian Ocean. While there is rhetoric, at least in the case of the previous administration, there was a lot of activities. If there was a Chinese flotilla making a move, there was immediately a U.S. flotilla or a U.S. carrier passing through. They're crisscrossing twice. So there was a deterrence mechanism that has been put in. George Aquilino is also saying that we have to put a credible deterrence mechanism to make sure that any attempts to take over Taiwan is thwarted. If Taiwan is taken over, all hell will break loose in the world.
And EU and China enter into a war of words after tit-for-tat sanctions. So we have been talking about this, isn't it, sir?
It is. We have been talking about it. Only thing is, it propped up again yesterday. Previously, you remember, EU said, we will sign an investment deal. Then a lot of people put a pressure on EU, which is to say you can't do that. Then Biden came in and said, we're about multilateralism. So EU now has basically turned around and stated, yes, we are multilateralism. We are part of the great allies. And so we are now going to ban investments until the Uyghur issue is resolved. So it has now become, EU makes a statement, China retaliates. EU makes a statement, China retaliates.
And viewers will remember that we had brought a Uyghur surgeon on our channel, an in-depth hangout several months ago, talking about this problem. So I'm sure and I'm glad that finally something is being done about it. Sir, US, South Korea, and Japan are going to meet virtually to discuss North Korean threats. What do you make of this?
I'm making what I'm making of this is, it's at least India has got its prioritization right in terms of where it puts its capital immediately. Nuclear submarines versus a second carrier. United States seems to be, the United States focus should be to call all the defense forces and talk about what is the credible deterrence mechanism that needs to come in, who are all going to play what type of role. Instead, these three countries are meeting to discuss the 3 or 4 missiles that the North Korean premier has fired into the short-range missiles fired into the Japan Sea.
Yes, and China and Russia have caught up with West in air power, according to a United Kingdom minister. So technologically wise, also they have caught up, isn't it?
They have. US is clearly lagged behind, and US has lagged behind on nuclear submarines. US has lagged behind on aircraft carriers. Has lagged behind on some of their frontline. That's why India went for Rafale rather than the 5th generation, fighter aircraft. So I think they're simply trying to point out. Britain is trying to point out that in United States, the allies have to come together as an integrated force, so that each can leverage their respective strengths in combating a belligerent China.
And Biden decision on US troops in Afghanistan may be imminent. What is your gut feel, sir? Will there be more troops back in, or will they draw down?
They will draw down, and there will be a collaboration between NATO. Clearly, NATO has said that it is not withdrawing. What role India is going to play remains a mystery, because India has been considered by Afghanistan. I think yesterday the external Minister for External Affairs made a statement that after his conversations with the Afghani foreign minister, that India stands head and shoulders with the Afghans to support their cause.
And in the recently concluded elections in Israel, Netanyahu claims a win, but majority is still not certain. So we will keep you posted on what is happening. Do you have any updates on that, sir?
Not yet. It's again a bartering. They'll get there.
Yes. And in global COVID news, AstraZeneca missteps threaten to erode further trust in COVID vaccine as company seeks US approval. So AstraZeneca is still not shipping in the United States, isn't it?
It is not. I think that we covered this, but it's important. It's now become a big issue, highlighted, which is effectively to say that, hey, there was mismanagement of the data. If you don't present the data, correct data, then we have a problem. Look, I think that there is a lot of sloppiness as well. Of all the things, Pfizer is most dominating in the United States, and as well as in some parts of Europe, notably Britain and so on. Hong Kong, hauls BioNTech. BioNTech is Pfizer. Or packing defects. So the story is that people still have not, taken cognizance of this. And I think that we are struggling along. But I think, countries like Israel, UK, United States, on a scale relatively, India is still small, 50 million, but 50 million is a big number. The vaccination programs kind of continue. I think India may also choose to reduce its exports so that it rapidly progresses to meet its internal demands.
You're talking about vaccines.
Vaccines.
And India records the biggest spike in the past 4 months of COVID. And there is again a lockdown in several places, including in southern cities such as Coimbatore. I just spoke to my mom, and they are having a lockdown there. So things are beginning to again tighten up. there is suddenly a spike. Could be because of all the variants, like you mentioned, sir. So I think I would just say people stay safe at home and watch our news broadcasts.
Thank you. Yes. Yes. But I would really caution people. When you actually present the data, right? Present the data. People have to kind of meaningfully absorb this data. It's about 40,000 or 44,000 people in a country of 1.4 billion. Okay, and most of it is in Maharashtra and some of the other places. Deaths increased by 300 or 500, whatever may be the number. Okay. Again, it's a big number. So don't deliver a fatalistic message and scare people. These are absorbable numbers in a pandemic. More people die of diabetics, more people die of cancer, more people die of heart attacks. So I think that overall scheme of things, India is still 160,000 by way of deaths. 160,000. And by the way, we haven't presented, tomorrow we'll present the data as we close out the week. Brazil has now replaced India as the number 2 leader in the league tables in terms of number of people afflicted with COVID. And Russia, France, Germany, they're all making up the ladder in terms of the 4 million plus. On a regulatory population, that's 4 million. It's a big number. So I think that this pandemic is here, and I think it has to be systematically solved. That's my message.
And in markets, Yellen considering corporate tax hike to fund the social liberal programs. Now we are at 22% or 21%, right?
Yeah, 21%. We're going to 28%.
Okay.
Plus there would be a 10% overseas tax.
Yeah, philosophically speaking, already US is playing catch up with Ireland, which is at 12%. And I would say 90% or 95% of the Fortune 500 companies are already located abroad. This is called as tax inversion. And even if they do, enforce this on the remaining few, how much do you think that's going to accumulate for the Treasury?
We'll give you the numbers. I think we have talked about this. We'll give you the numbers in terms of their estimate. Most of the money is coming from those 3 drivers that we talked about in their calculations. We will share the calculations, but how accurate it is, we can't corroborate. The wealth tax, the estate tax, and the capital gains tax. That's where the maximum money is coming from.
With that, we come to an end of today's news. Sridharji, get well. I know you are not fully restored, but thanks for taking the effort and meeting with us, saying hi to our viewers. There have been a lot of requests about inquiries about your health. Sir, we all look forward to having you along with our first cup of coffee. And once again, thank you very much. And viewers, we'll be back tomorrow bright and early, and we will round out this week with more programs. Thank you and namaskaram, sir.
Thank you and namaskar, and have a wonderful day. And thank you for all your concerns and well wishes.